لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of all that exists, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His final messenger, Muhammad, his family and his companions.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
Beware, because you are dealing with Allah.
وأنا في يوم من أيام رمضان
One day in the month of Ramadan,
كان أحد تجار المملكة
one of the businessmen in Saudi Arabia,
كان يقوم بتوزيع الزكاة بنفسه.
he would go and he would distribute his zakah by his own hand.
فكان يخرج صباحا ويتوجه إلى القرى.
He would leave out in the morning and he would go to the different villages,
ومعه حقيبته مملوءة بالريالات.
and he would have a briefcase with him full of riyals.
ويتوجه من قرية إلى أخرى.
And he would pass from one town to the next.
في يوم من الأيام عندما توجه نفترض إلى القرى الشرقية من الرياض.
So one day as he was setting out to do this, he went towards the east of Riyadh, to those villages.
أدركته صلاة الظهر.
And then the time of Dhuhr came in.
فوقف عند محطات البنزين.
So he stopped at one of the service stations
فصلى الظهر
and he
هناك.
prayed Dhuhr.
ثم استلقى بعد صلاة الظهر في هذا المسجد.
And then he just rested for a short while in that masjid.
فرأى في المنام شخصا فقيرا.
He saw in a dream that he had during that nap, he saw a poor man.
فقيل له في المنام هذا رجل فقير.
And someone said to him in the dream, this is a poor man.
من القرية الفلانية.
And he lives in such and such a village.
وهذه القرية الناحية الغربية وليست الناحية الشرقية المتوجهة إليه.
And that village was in the opposite direction, in the west, as opposed to the east where he was.
فقيل له في المنام هذا رجل فقير لم يفطر منذ 3 أيام إلا على الماء فقط.
And he was told in the dream, this is a poor man, for 3 days he hasn't had any food and all he survives on is water.
ومعه زوجته وأولاده.
And he's married, he has a wife and children.
وما عندهم إلا الماء كانوا يفطرون عليه منذ 3 أيام.
And they can only have water, that's all that they have access to.
استيقظ من المنام.
So when he woke up from that dream,
فقال لا أذهبن إلى هذه القرية.
he thought to himself that I'm going to drive to that village.
فتوجه نحو القرى الغربية.
And so he went to that direction in the west,
وذهب إلى تلك القرية.
and he went to that same village,
وصل إليها قبل أذان المغرب.
and he arrived just before the time of Maghrib.
وجد فيها مسجدا وحيدا.
And he saw only a single mosque in that village.
دخل قبل المغرب وصلى ركعتين وجلس في المسجد.
So he entered the masjid, he prayed his 2 rak'ahs, and he sat there waiting
في الصف الأول.
in the first row.
خلف الإمام كان أول من دخل المسجد هو.
He was sitting directly behind the imam, he's the first one in the masjid.
دخل وقت المغرب.
So the time of Maghrib came in,
أتى الإمام ليصلي بالناس.
and the imam came to lead the salah.
صلى بالناس.
He prayed, led the prayer,
بعد الصلاة التفت الإمام إلى الناس.
and after the prayer, as the imam does, he turned and faced the people.
هذا الرجل غني رأى بأن هذا الإمام هو الذي رآه في المنام بأنه هو الرجل فقير.
The rich man, that this man who's giving his zakah, he recognized that the man who's the imam was the same man he saw in his dream.
انطلق الناس بعد الصلاة.
So the people after salah, they were leaving the masjid.
فكلم الإمام هذا الضيف التاجر.
So the imam, he came up to the rich man who's a stranger in that place,
ولا يعرفه.
and he doesn't know him.
فقال أنت رجل غريب عن هذه.
He said, you're a stranger to this town,
فلا بد أن تفطر عندي هذه الليلة.
so you must come and have iftar with me, eat with me this evening,
ويجب أن أضيفك.
and you must be my guest.
قال وجدتها فرصة.
So then the rich man thought, well, this is a good opportunity
لأتأكد من صحة الرؤية التي
so that
رأيتها.
I can assure myself that my dream was correct.
قال قد أجبت دعوتك.
So he said, I accept your invitation.
يقول انطلقت معه إلى بيته.
So he went with him to his house,
دخلت بيته.
and I entered his house,
والله ما رأيت في البيت شيئا يرد العين.
and he said that there was nothing amazing in the house, nothing that would catch your attention.
رأيت أبنائه الصغار ما عندهم شيء إلا ثوب فقط يغطي عورتهم.
I saw his children, and they were only wearing one piece of clothing that would cover their private parts.
قال فجلست
So I sat there,
أنتظر الإفطار.
and I was waiting for him to present me some food.
قال دخل الرجل.
So the man entered,
ثم أتى إلي بكأس من الماء.
and he brought him a glass of water,
قال تفضل.
and he said, "Hey, please take some."
ثم قال له سامحني واعذرني.
And then he said to him, the imam said to him, please forgive me.
والله لو وجدت شيئا غير الماء لأتيتك.
If I had anything other than water, I would have given it to you.
ولكنني يجب أن أضيفك فأنت غريب.
But I must still offer you some hospitality because you're a stranger.
قال فسألته.
So the rich man, he said,
قلت له منذ متى وأنت تفطر على الماء فقط؟
I asked him, how many days have you been surviving just on water?
قال منذ 3 أيام.
He said, for 3 days.
فتأكدت عندي صحة هذه الرؤية.
So now the rich man said, I was sure that my dream was true.
قلت له انتظرني قليلا.
So I said to this man, wait for me, give me a minute.
دعني أخرج إلى السيارة ثم أعود
Let
إليك.
me go to my car and let me come back to you.
قال ذهبت إلى السيارة وأخرجت حقيبتي
He said, so I went and I took my briefcase
وأدخلتها عنده.
and I came back
فتحت له هذه الحقيبة
and I opened it up for him.
مملوءة بمئات الريالات كما قال بآلاف الريالات.
And it's full of thousands of riyals.
قلت له تفضل خذ ما يكفيك مدة عام كامل.
And I said to him, take what you need from this money for a whole year.
فنظر إلي
So he looked at me
قال الحمد لله أنا بخير
and he said, Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
ولا أحتاج إلى المال.
I don't need any money
الله عز وجل قد كفاني.
because Allah Azza wa Jalla is sufficient for me.
قلت ما عندك شيء إلا الماء.
I said to him, you only have water that you're living on,
قلت لتأخذه.
so you must take something.
قال لا أخذ شيء.
He said, I don't want anything.
قلت له كيف؟
I asked him why.
قال تريد أن تفتنني بهذا المال؟
He said, this wealth that you're going to give to me will be a fitna for me.
قلت خذ هذا المال هو مالك.
So I said to him, this is your right, take from this wealth.
ثم أقسمت عليه بالله أن يأخذ من هذا المال.
And I took an oath by Allah, made him swear that he would take something.
إخواني أخذ لمدة سنة كاملة تعلمون كم؟
So do you know how much he took from that money for a whole year?
أخذ 1000 ريال.
He took 1,000 riyals,
ما يعادل 200 إبان تقريبا.
which is about 200 pounds.
قال هذا يكفيك مدة عام؟
So I said to him, is that enough for a whole year, 200 pounds?
قال نعم وزيادة.
He said, not only is it enough, but it's more than enough.
هذا الفقير عرف الله فعرفه الله.
And so this poor man, because of his relationship with Allah, then Allah Azza wa Jalla didn't forget him.
أرسل الله عز وجل إليه أحد كبار تجار لخدمة هذا الفقير.
Allah sent to him a rich man, a well-known businessman, to go and help him in his own village.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
لا تتعامل مع البشر.
You're not dealing with people.
لا ينسى الله عز وجل دعوتك في الليل.
Allah Azza wa Jalla doesn't forget the dua you make during the night.
لا ينسى صدقك مع الله.
Allah Azza wa Jalla doesn't forget the truthfulness and sincerity that you have.
أخوان في يوم من الأيام كان أحد تجار يسمى بالدكتور هشام.
There was another businessman by the name of Dr. Hisham,
وهذا الدكتور هشام متخصص في طب الأطفال.
and he was a pediatrician, a specialist in children's medicine.
وكان من أكبر أطباء الشام.
And he was from the most well-known experts in his field in the whole of Asham.
وكانت المستشفيات في عدة مدن تطلبه فيأتي إليه بمقابل أي يجي له عمليات.
And he would have people, different hospitals, inviting him to their hospitals, and they would pay him so that he would come and he would treat people.
ومن فترة أخرى يسافر من مدينة إلى مدينة من أجل إجراء العمليات وفحص.
And so every so often he would go to a different city, a different hospital, in order to examine people, to perform surgery on them.
في يوم من الأيام كان قد سافر من دمشق إلى إحدى المدن الأخرى في الشام.
So one day he was going to travel from Damascus, where he lived, to another city.
في تلك الفترة أو في ذاك اليوم كان الجو ممطر شديد المطر.
That day it was extremely heavy rain,
وفيه كما يقال في شيء من الصواعق.
and there was lightning and thunder.
فاضطرت الطائرة أن تنزل في الطريق ولم تصل قبل أن تصل إلى المدينة.
And so the flight he was on, the plane, had to make an emergency stop because of the weather conditions.
فتقدم هذا الطبيب إلى مسؤولي الطيران.
And so when they landed, the doctor, he went to the people in charge of the airline,
قال متى ستنطلق الطائرة الآن في هذا المكان إلى المدينة التي أردتها؟
and he asked them, when's this flight going to continue, reach its destination?
قال ربما نتأخر أكثر من 10 ساعات.
They said maybe for another 10 hours we're stuck here.
قال وكيف عندي عملية في المدينة الأخرى؟
He said that I have surgery to perform, I can't be late.
قال لا الأمر ليس بيدي.
They said it's not up to us.
ولكن تستطيع أن تستأجر سيارة المكان قريب تستطيع خلال أقل من 2 ساعات تصل إليه.
But you can hire a car and it's only 2 hours to our destination.
قال فاستأجرت السيارة.
So he took a car
انطلقت في هذه السيارة.
and he started driving.
في الطريق مطر شديد.
But it's extremely heavy rain on the way.
لم أستطع أن أكمل الطريق.
So he couldn't carry on driving.
وجدت قرية لجأت إلى قرية.
So he saw a village on the way and he stopped at the village.
وجدت بيتا فيه ضوء توجهت إلى هذا البيت.
And he saw a house with the lights on, so he went towards that house
طرقت في الباب.
and he knocked on the door.
فسمعت امرأة عجوز من الخلف.
And I heard an old woman say
تقول تفضل تفضل.
to him, come in, come in.
قال فدخلت فإذا صالة قالت اجلس في هذه الصالة.
And so as I came in, I saw a room a sitting room and she said, sit down,
أنا أعلم ماذا يحصل في الخارج.
because I know what's going on outside.
أمامك الفاكهة، كل وخذ راحتك إلى أن يذهب هذا المطر، ثم بعد ذلك خذ طريقك.
She said, there's some fruit on the table, help yourself, and you can wait here until the rain subsides.
قال جلست في هذه الصالة.
So he sat there.
فكنت أسمع صوت بكاء صبي صغير.
He said, whilst I was sitting there, I heard a young child crying.
فتقوم هذه العجوز بحركة بطيئة تذهب إلى هذا الصغير.
And so this old woman would get up slowly and she would go to the child
تسكت هذا الصغير.
and she would reconcile him,
ثم ترجع إلى مكانها.
and then she would return to her seat.
وبعد فترة أخرى يبكي الصغير تذهب وهكذا.
But after a short while, the child cries again, so she goes back, calms him down, comes back.
قلت يا خالة ما لي هذا الطفل؟
So after a while of this happening, he said to her, my aunt, what is this?
قالت هو مريض.
So she replied, he's sick, the child.
وذهبت إلى المستوصف لعلاجه.
And I went to the local clinic to treat him.
فقالوا فيه مرض.
And they said to me, he has an illness.
ولا يعرف ولا يستطيع أن يعالجه هنا عندنا إلا في دكتور في الشام في دمشق يقال له دكتور هشام.
And they said to her that this sickness, only one person is known to be able to treat it in this whole area, and that is Dr. Hisham.
وسألت عن القيمة قالوا يأخذ مبالغ كبيرة.
And so I asked them, how much will it cost? And they said, it's too expensive, it's very expensive.
قالت ما أستطيع أن أذهب إلى دمشق.
So she thought to herself, I can't afford to go all the way to Damascus,
وأنا ما عندي مال لأدفع لهذا الدكتور.
and I can't pay his fees.
ولذلك أداويه بأي شيء أستطيع أن أداويه.
And so she just took what she could from the clinic in order to help the child.
قال هل تسمحي لي بأن أفحص هذا الطفل؟
So the doctor said to her, can I examine the child?
فأخذ عدته من السيارة.
So he took his stuff from his car
وفحص هذا الطفل.
and he examined the child,
فوجد علاجه شيء يسيرا.
and he realized that his treatment is actually very simple.
فأعطاها العلاج.
And so he gave her some treatment.
فقالت له من أنت؟
So she said, who are you?
جزاك الله خيرا.
May Allah reward you with good.
قال أنا الدكتور هشام.
He said, I am Dr. Hisham.
قالت أنت الدكتور هشام الذي في الشام في دمشق؟
She asked, are you the same doctor who's from Damascus?
قال نعم.
He said, yes.
الله عز وجل لا ينسى دمعتك في الليل.
Allah Azza wa Jalla doesn't forget your tears as you cry during the night.
أرسل الله عز وجل أشهر دكتور محتاجا إلى هذه المرأة.
But rather Allah sent this doctor with all of his fame and his position to this woman, and he was the one in need of her help.
ليست هي المحتاجة إليه.
She didn't know who he was,
ولم تدفع فلسا واحدا.
nor did she spend a single penny.
أرسله الله عز وجل إليه.
But Allah Azza wa Jalla sent him to her
بدعوة ودمعة خرجت في الليل.
because of a dua she made and the tears that she shed during the night.
الله عز وجل أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
أنت تتعامل مع عظيم مع ملك السماوات والأرض.
You are dealing with the one who is the king of the heavens and the earth.
لا تتعامل مع مخلوق.
You're not dealing with another creation.
شيء يسير الله عز وجل يبارك لك أضعاف مضاعفة.
You do something small and Allah blesses your efforts.
لا يحتاج الله عز وجل إليك أنت.
Allah Azza wa Jalla is not in need of you,
أنت تحتاج إلى الله.
but you are the one in need of Allah.
افتقر إلى الله قبل أن تفتقر إلى الناس.
And so show your need before Allah before you show your need before others.
أخواني عندنا في الكويت كان هناك دكتور يسمى الدكتور عباس.
The Sheikh said that in Kuwait there's a professor, a doctor by the name of Abbas.
رحمه الله.
May Allah have mercy on him.
يخبرني عن قصته.
He told the Sheikh of his story, something that happened to him.
كان هذا الدكتور هو مدير لشركة كبرى عندنا في منتصف الكويت.
This man was a CEO of a company, well-known company in Kuwait.
ثم بعد انتقل إلى التدريس.
And then he left that job and he went towards teaching.
فأصبح عميدا لكلية الهندسة عندنا في جامعة الكويت.
And so he became the dean of the Faculty of Engineering in the University of Kuwait.
قال يعني نفترض إخواني بيته في هذه المنطقة.
Let us imagine that his house is in an area.
جامعة الكويت نفترض في المنطقة الشرقية من بيته.
And let us now also say that the university where he works is to the east of his house.
بينما الشركة التي كان يعمل في السابق مدير عاما في المنطقة الغربية.
And as for the company that he used to work for, that's in the western region.
يقول لي في يوم من الأيام خرجت في الصباح وأنا أفكر في الاجتماع الذي عندنا في الجامعة.
He said one morning I set out from my home and I was busy, preoccupied my mind because of a meeting we had in the department.
قال حركت السيارة.
So he said I started driving.
وانطلقت وأنا أفكر في النقاط التي سأتكلم عنها في هذا الاجتماع.
And he said, and I was preoccupied in my mind about the meeting and the different points we had to discuss.
قال فجأة وجدت نفسي أمام الشركة التي كنت أعمل فيها في الجهة
And
الغربية.
he said, before I realized, I ended up at the company that I used to work for.
كما يقال عقل الباطن هو الذي ساقني إلى ذاك المكان.
It's like subconsciously he was so preoccupied that he just drove in a direction.
قال أنا ما أستطيع أن أبي المنطقة الشرقية بسبب شدة الازدحام.
He said, and now because it's rush hour, it's going to take him too long to go all the way back to the east to the university.
لا بد أن أنتظر مدة ساعة على الأقل حتى تقل الزحمة ثم أتوجه.
So he thought to himself, it's going to take an hour or so for this traffic to die down, then I can go there.
قلت إذا دعني أدخل الشركة السابقة التي كنت أعمل حتى أسلم على الموظفين.
So he said, what? Because I was there, I thought to myself, let me go to the company, let me meet those people I used to work with.
واتصلت بمدير مكتبي ليخبر رؤساء الأقسام بأننا سنؤجل الاجتماع بعد.
And he called his secretary and told them that we're going to delay the meeting till later.
قال دخلت الشركة.
So he said, I went to the company I used to work for.
توجهت إلى المدير العام الذي حل محلي الآن.
And I went to look at meet the new CEO, the one who succeeded me.
دخلت عليه فرحب بي قال مرحبا بالدكتور عباس.
And when I came in, he was extremely happy and he welcomed me.
الحمد لله انحلت المشكلة.
And he said to me, Alhamdulillah, the problem's solved.
ما يحتاج أن تأتي أنت وتتعب نفسك.
You didn't need to come all this way for anything.
قلت ما المشكلة؟
So I asked him, what problem?
قال أنت تتغافل.
He said, you don't need to pretend,
تفضل دكتور.
but you can come and sit now since you're here.
فاتصل بإحدى الموظفات.
So then he called one of his female employees.
قال تفضلي الدكتور عباس الآن موجود عندنا.
And he said to her, come to my office because Dr. Abbas has arrived.
أتت الموظفة دخلت علينا.
So she came in.
قال دكتور عباس جزاك الله خيرا.
And she said the same thing, may Allah reward you with good.
الحمد لله انحلت المشكلة.
But it's okay, Alhamdulillah, the problem's solved.
ما يحتاج أن تتعب نفسك.
You didn't have to come all this way out.
قلت وين المشكلة؟
So I asked again, what problem?
قالت أنت تتغافل دكتور.
She said, you don't need to pretend.
اتصلت بأمها وأنا عند المدير.
So then she called her mother on the phone.
وأنا أعرف أمها.
And this Dr. Abbas said, I knew her mother from before.
امرأة كبيرة في السن عجوز.
She's an old lady.
وصاحبة صيام وقيام وصدقة.
And she's known for her fasting and her charity.
قالت يا أماه.
So she said on the phone, mother,
الدكتور عباس الآن عندنا هنا.
Dr. Abbas has arrived here.
قال دعيني أكلمه.
So she said, let me speak to him.
قال فكلمتها في الهاتف.
So I spoke to her on the phone.
قال جزاك الله خير دكتور عباس.
And she said the same thing, may Allah reward you with good.
على مجيئك.
That you came all this way.
قلت يا خال أخبريني ماذا حدث؟
So he said, I asked her, I don't understand what's going on.
قالت يا دكتور أنا سأخبرك.
So she said, let me tell you the story.
في نهاية الأسبوع الماضي.
At the end of last week.
عندما أتتني ابنتي بعدما انتهى عملها.
After my daughter finished work, she came home to me.
أتتني وهي تبكي.
She was crying.
قالت يا أماه.
And she said, oh my mother,
أنا ظلمت في عملي.
I've been oppressed at work.
هم اتهموني بأن أنا المخطئة في العمل.
They've accused me of making a mistake at work.
وحصلت عندهم خسارة فهم حملوني هذه الخسارة.
And they lost money as a result of that mistake, and so they docked my wages.
والله يا أماه ما لي علاقة بهذا.
And she said, but I had nothing to do with this issue.
إنما موظف آخر.
But rather that's a different employee.
حاولت أشرح لهم ما استمعوا لي.
And I tried to explain the situation, but they weren't listening.
يا أماه اعملي شيئا لي.
So she said to her mother, help me.
قلت ماذا أفعل وأنا امرأة عجوز.
So she replied, the mother replied, she said, what can I do? I'm an old woman.
ولا أعرف أحد في الشركة.
And I don't know anyone in your place of work.
كنت في السابق أعرف الدكتور عباس.
But I used to know the old CEO, Dr. Abbas.
ولكن الآن ترك الشركة.
But he doesn't work there anymore.
وليس عندي هاتف دكتور عباس.
And I don't have his phone number that I can connect with him.
حتى أكلمه لعله يتدخل.
That he can come and help you in this situation.
ولكن والله ما عندي إلا الله.
But all that I can do is make dua for you.
فأخذت تقول في الليل في آخر الليل وأنا أدعو الله.
So she said, during the last portion of the night, I woke up and made dua
أن يحل مشكلتي.
that Allah solves your issue.
وأن يرسلك إلي في قبل بداية الأسبوع القادم.
And that Allah should send you, or Dr. Abbas, before the week began.
لعلي أشرح لك المشكلة.
That maybe I can explain to you the problem.
فتتوسط وتشفع لي لابنتي.
And you can go and you can intercede on her behalf.
وما رأيت منك اتصالا.
But I couldn't find your number, couldn't connect with you.
ثم بعد ذلك في بداية هذا اليوم الذي أنت أتيت فيه إلى.
And today, just before you arrived at the company,
عندما ذهبت ابنتي إلى العمل.
when my daughter returned back to work,
فتحوا تحقيقا في هذا الموضوع.
they had completed an investigation over this error.
فتأكدوا بأن ابنتي ليست لها علاقة.
And they realized that my daughter didn't have anything to do with it.
فأخبروها بأن لا علاقة لها بهذا.
And they told her that you're innocent.
واعتذروا منها.
And they apologized.
بعد ذلك مباشرة اتصلت بابنتي تقول بأن الدكتور عباس الآن موجود
And
عندنا.
as soon as they did that, then she called me and told me that you're there.
فأتيت بعد ما انحلت المشكلة.
And so you arrived, but the issue was dealt with.
إخواني الله عز وجل ما نسي دعوة هذه المرأة العجوز.
So Allah Azza wa Jalla didn't forget or neglect the dua of the old woman,
وما نسي دمعتها في الليل.
nor the tears that she shed during the night.
ما نسي دعوتها في الثلث الأخير من الليل.
He didn't forget her dua during the last third of the night,
الذي ينزل فيه الله عز وجل السماء الدنيا.
in which Allah Azza wa Jalla descends to the lowest heaven.
فيقول هل من داع فأستجيب له.
And He asks, is anyone making dua that I may respond to
هل من
them?
مستغفر فأغفر له.
Is anyone seeking forgiveness that I may forgive
هل
them?
من سائل فأعطيه.
Is there anyone with a request that I may grant it?
فالله عز وجل استجاب لدعوة هذه المرأة العجوز.
And so Allah Azza wa Jalla answered the dua of the old woman,
التي لا حول لها ولا قوة.
who has no other recourse. She doesn't have any power,
ولا علاقة لها بهذه الشركة.
and nor does she have any contacts within that company.
وحقق طلبها
But Allah Azza wa Jalla answered her request,
دون تدخل دكتور عباس.
even though Dr. Abbas didn't have anything to do in the end with the issue.
لأن الله عز وجل هو الملك وليس الدكتور عباس.
Because Allah Azza wa Jalla, He's the one who controls everything.
ثم أرسل الدكتور عباس استجابة فقط لدعوتها.
But the Dr. Abbas only came as a response to the dua of the old woman,
فقط ضيف شرف ولا أثر له فيه.
as if he's just a guest of honor.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
تتعامل مع عظيم.
You are dealing with one who is great.
لا تتعامل مع مخلوق.
You are not dealing with other creations.
ليكون اتصال مباشر بينك وبين الله.
And so your connection with Allah should be a direct connection,
أنت غالي على الله.
because you are precious to Allah,
دمعتك غالية على الله.
and your tears are precious to Allah,
ألمك غالي على الله.
and the pain that you feel, it is precious to Allah.
إذا كنت مع الله يرفع الله عز وجل شأنك.
If you are with Allah, then Allah will raise your station.
نبي الله يوسف عليه السلام
The Prophet of Allah, Yusuf alayhi salam,
كان في كل لحظة مع الله.
in every moment of his life, he's with Allah.
في بيت العزيز قال معاذ الله.
In the house of Aziz, he said, I seek refuge with Allah,
كان مع الله.
because he was conscious of Allah.
في السجن مع السجناء كان مع الله.
And when he was in prison with the other prisoners, he remembered Allah.
سألوه عن رؤية هم رأوها.
They asked him concerning a dream that they had seen,
بدأ معهم في التوحيد.
but what he began in his response to them was the tawheed of Allah.
قبل أن يجيبهم على سؤالهم.
Before he interpreted their dream,
قال إني تركت ملة قوم لا يؤمنون بالله.
and he said to them that I have left the people who don't believe in Allah,
وهم بالآخرة هم كافرون.
and they disbelieve in the akhirah.
واتبعت ملة آبائي.
But I have followed the way of my fathers,
إبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب.
Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub.
ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من
It
شيء.
is not befitting for us to commit shirk with Allah.
ذلك من فضل الله علينا
That
وعلى
is from the favors of Allah upon us and others.
ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون.
But most people are ungrateful.
يا صاحبي السجن.
Oh, my two companions in the prison,
أأرباب متفرقون خير.
are multiple gods better,
أم الله الواحد القهار.
or Allah, the one, the all-powerful?
ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها.
All that you worship besides Allah are just names that you have chosen.
سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم.
You have given to them, you and your forefathers before you,
ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان.
for which Allah sent down no authority.
إن الحكم إلا لله.
For all kingdom and dominion belongs to Allah alone.
أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه.
And He commanded that you should worship only Him.
ذلك الدين القيم.
That is the upright religion.
ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلم.
But most people do not know.
ثم أجاب قال يا صاحبي السجن.
And then he went on to interpret their dream.
أما أحدكما فيسقي ربه.
He said, one of you will give wine to his leader.
بجملتين أنهى إجابته.
And so within two short sentences, he interpreted their dream.
لكن المقدمة الدعوة إلى التوحيد.
But before all of that, he spoke about tawheed
والتحذير من الشرك.
and to beware of shirk.
كان مع الله في كل لحظة.
And so every moment he's thinking of Allah.
النسوة عندما اجتمعنا عليه.
When the women of the town gathered upon him
وراودنه.
and they tried to seduce him,
فخير بين الاستجابة وبين السجن.
and he was given the choice of either responding to them or to go to prison,
توجه إلى الله. كان
he
مع الله.
turned to Allah Azza wa Jalla, remembered him,
قال ربي السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني.
and he said, oh Allah, prison is more beloved to me than their call.
مع الملك.
With the king,
قال إن ربي بكيدهن عليم.
he said to the king that indeed my Lord knows of their plotting.
كان مع الله في كل لحظة.
He was always mindful of Allah,
رفعه الله.
So Allah Azza wa Jal raised him
جعله عزيز مصر.
and He made him the leader of Misr, of Egypt.
الله عز وجل لا ينسى العمل القليل منك أنت.
So Allah Azza wa Jal does not forget the small action that you perform.
لا ينسى دعائك وأنت ساجد.
He doesn't forget the dua that you make whilst in sajda.
لا ينسى صدقتك.
He doesn't forget the sadaqah that you've given.
لا ينسى العمل القليل الذي قمت به.
He doesn't forget the small actions that you perform.
امرأة إخواني امرأة بغي من البغايا.
There was a woman who was a prostitute.
ربما في الليل يجامعها ويأتيها ربما 10 رجال.
Maybe every night she has multiple men visiting her.
وتنتقل من قرية إلى قرية ومارست هذا.
And she goes from village to village for her profession.
في يوم من الأيام في يوم حار.
But on one day when it was extremely hot,
بينما هي تنتقل من قرية إلى قرية.
and as she's moving from one village to the next,
عطشت في الطريق.
she became thirsty
وجدت بئرا.
and she saw a well.
نزلت في البئر.
So she went down into the well
شربت الماء.
and she drank from it.
ارتفعت بعد ذاك من
And then
البئر.
she came out of the well.
وجدت كلبا يلهث.
She saw a dog panting from thirst.
حيوان يلهث.
It is an animal.
ليس إنسان.
It's not human.
فقالت أصابه من العطش ما أصابه.
So she thought to herself, this dog is just as thirsty as I was.
فنزلت البئر مرة.
So she went back down into that well
ملأت حذاءها بالماء.
and she took her shoe off and filled it with water.
هي من أهل التوحيد. هي من أهل التوحيد.
And she's a believer.
فملأت حذاءها بالماء.
And she filled her shoe with water.
ارتفعت وقدمت هذا الماء.
And then she came out the well and she gave it to the dog.
رآها الله عز وجل.
Allah Azza wa Jal saw that action of hers.
ما رآها أحد من البشر.
No one else saw her
رحمت مخلوق من مخلوقات الله.
because she had mercy for one of Allah's creations.
هي ترحم المخلوقات الله عز وجل يرحمها.
And because of her mercy towards that dog, shouldn't Allah be merciful towards her?
غفر الله عز وجل.
So Allah forgave her.
غفر لها ذنوبه.
Allah forgave her sins
بسقياها لمخلوق من المخلوقات وهي من أهل التوحيد.
because she watered, whilst having tawheed, she watered another of Allah's creation.
ولم ترائي أحد من الناس.
And she wasn't showing off, there was no one around.
لا ينسى الله عز وجل عملك القليل.
Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't forget the small actions you perform.
أنت لا تتعامل مع كسائر البشر.
You're not dealing with other humans.
يقول ماذا أعطاني؟
That person will think, what have you done for me?
أعطاني قليل أنا لا أرد عليه إلا الشيء القليل.
He's hardly done anything for me, so I'll hardly do anything for him.
الله عز وجل لا يتعاملك بهذا.
Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't deal with you like that.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
إخواني الخليفة عبد الملك بن مروان.
The Khalifa Abdul Malik ibn Marwan,
في يوم من الأيام كان يسير مع حاشيته.
he was one day traveling with his entourage
فمر على بئر.
and he passed by a well.
فسقط منه دينار.
And a dinar fell within the well.
فقال سأنزل في هذا البئر.
So he said, I'm going to go down and retrieve that dinar
لأستخرج الدينار.
so that I may take the dinar.
قال له الحاشية نحن ننزل عنك.
So the entourage that he was with, they said, we'll go down for you.
قال لا.
He said no.
نزل بنفسه.
He went down himself
أخرج الدينار.
and he took the dinar
فقام بتنظيفه وغسله.
and then he started to wash it and clean it.
قال لما يا أمير المؤمنين؟
So some people said to him, why go through all of this, Amir al-Mu'mineen?
نحن نكفيك بهذا.
We could have done this for
من
you.
أجل دينار.
It's only a dinar anyway.
أنت تملك من الصين إلى المغرب.
And your kingdom expands from Morocco all the way to China.
قال الأمر ليس من أجل كونه
He said, I didn't go down just for the dinar,
لأن عليه اسم الله عز وجل.
but on the dinar is the name of Allah.
فأحببت أن أعظم الله.
And so I wanted to glorify Allah by extracting it and cleaning it.
فثبت الله عز وجل مملكته.
And so Allah Azza wa Jal gave him steadfastness in his kingdom
عظم الله فعظمه الله عز وجل.
because he glorified Allah, so then Allah raised him.
الله كبير.
Allah Azza wa Jal is great.
لا ينسى القليل منك.
He doesn't forget the small things that you do.
لا ينسى صيامك.
He doesn't forget your fasting.
لا ينسى صلاتك.
He doesn't forget your salah.
لا ينسى بكائك.
Doesn't forget your tears.
لا ينسى قراءتك القرآن.
He doesn't forget your recitation of the Quran.
لا ينسى إطعامك للمسكين.
He doesn't forget that you fed a poor person
لا ينسى إطعامك للناس.
or that you fed others.
لا ينسى دعائك في جوف
He
الليل.
doesn't forget your dua during the middle of the night.
لا ينسى التصاقك بجنابه.
And he doesn't forget your connection with him.
من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى
Whoever does good deeds, whether male or female,
وهو مؤمن
and they are believers,
فلنحيينه حياة طيبة
then we will give to them a goodly life.
ونجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون.
And we will reward them with the best of that which they did.
بينما إذا عرضت عن الله تبارك وتعالى
However, if on the other hand you turn away from Allah
وتعلقت بغير الله تبارك
and you
وتعالى
attach yourself to other than Allah,
يجعل الله عز وجل عذابك على يده.
Allah Azza wa Jalla will make that person that you attach yourself with the very reason for your punishment,
أعرضت عن الله
because you turn away from Allah.
وكلك الله عز وجل المخلوقات.
So then Allah leaves you and entrusts you to those whom you put your trust in.
الله كبير.
Allah is great.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
أخواني كان فيه طبيب من أشهر أطباء الشام.
There used to be a doctor who was from the most famous doctors of Sham
في الخمسينات من القرن الماضي.
in the 1950s.
وكان متخصصا في طب النساء.
And he was an expert in the medicine or the treatment of women.
وكان لا يخرج من بيته ليداوي امرأة
And he wouldn't leave his house in order to treat someone
إلا مقابل ليرة من ذهب.
unless someone paid him a lira of gold.
مهما كانت المرأة وزوجها مهما كانوا فقراء.
Even if those people were extremely poor,
دعوهم يبيعوا كل أثاث البيت من أجل هذا.
he would say to them, sell your furniture, sell your possessions, but I need my gold.
من أجل أن يجمع المال لزوجته.
And so that he could gather his wealth and money to please his wife,
بنى لها قصرا عظيما.
he built her a palace using that gold.
ما حن قلبه للضعفاء.
His heart wasn't softened by the poor and the needy,
نسي الله.
and he forgot Allah.
مرت الأيام.
As the days passed by,
أصيب بالشلل.
he became paralyzed,
تضايقت منه زوجته.
and his wife became fed up of looking after him.
ما يستطيع أن يعمل الآن.
He can't work anymore.
فألقته في القبو في السرداب في سرداب القصر.
So she placed him, made a room for him in the basement,
ولا تنزل إليه إلا يوما واحدا فقط يوم الجمعة.
and she would only visit him on Fridays, once a week,
تمكث عنده ساعة ثم ترجع.
and she would spend only an hour with him even then and then go back.
وتجعل خادم هو الذي يهتم به.
And she would have a servant that would do everything else for him.
في إحدى الجمعات
One of those Fridays,
ما نزلت إليه زوجته.
she didn't even come down that day.
فقال الخادم.
So the man, the doctor was paralyzed, he said to the servant,
أخبري زوجتي بأنها لم تأتيني اليوم.
can you ask my wife, remind her it's a Friday, she normally visits.
الخادم ذهبت إلى الزوجة وأخبرتها بها.
And so the servant went and he told her.
نزلت إليه الزوجة.
So she came down
سبته وشتمته.
and she began to swear at him and curse him.
قالت إن سمعت أن تتكلم بهذه الكلمة مرة أخرى لألقينك خارج البيت.
She said that if I ever hear you complaining again, I'll kick you out of the house.
أعرض عن الله وتعلق بغير الله.
So when he turned away from Allah and attached himself to other than Allah,
جعل الله عز وجل عذابه على يد هذا المحبوب الذي تعلق.
he made that person that he attached himself to the very means of his punishment.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
إذا عرضت عن الله تبارك وتعالى.
If you turn away from Allah,
قد يجعل الله عز وجل هذا الشخص يربي من هلاكه على يده.
Allah Azza wa Jal may make the very person who is your enemy, make that person make the tarbiyah of your enemy.
إخواني فرعون.
Pharaoh.
أخبر بأن هلاكه سيكون على يد رجل بني إسرائيل.
He was told that his destruction will be at the hands of someone from Bani Israel.
مرت الأيام.
As the days passed by,
رب موسى في بيته.
he is the one who's now nurturing Musa in his own house.
وأحب موسى عيسى.
And he loved Musa.
وزوجته أحبت موسى.
And his wife loved Musa.
مرت الأيام هلاكه على يد موسى.
And as the days passed by, Musa would be the one to destroy him by Allah's permission.
رب فرعون من هلاكه على يده.
And so Pharaoh gave tarbiyah, he gave upbringing and nurturing to the very person that would destroy him.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
الله عز وجل قد يبدل الأدوار.
Allah Azza wa Jal may change your circumstances.
عزيز مصر.
The leader of Egypt,
سجن يوسف عليه السلام.
he imprisoned Yusuf alayhi salam.
يوسف عليه السلام كان مملوكا.
And Yusuf at that time was a slave.
كان مملوكا عنده.
And he was a slave of that leader.
سجنه ظلما.
And so he oppressed him and imprisoned him wrongly.
وهذا عزيز مصر.
And he's the leader of Egypt.
وموسى عليه السلام مملوك لدى هذا العزيز.
And Yusuf's just a slave.
وسجنه.
And he imprisoned him.
من يسأل عن يوسف عليه السلام؟
Who's going to inquire after Yusuf? Who's going to ask about him or care?
مرت الأيام.
But as the days pass by,
أصبح يوسف عزيز مصر بدلا من هذا.
Yusuf alayhi salam takes the place of that leader of Egypt.
وزيح عزيز مصر وأصبح يوسف مكانه.
That leader was removed, Yusuf was given his position.
من الذي يخطر على باله سيكون هذا الأمر؟
Who would have thought that that would happen?
مملوك مسجون مظلوم لا يسأل أحد عنه فجأة أصبح عزيز مصر.
He is a slave and imprisoned and wrongly and justly, no one to support him, and Allah makes him the leader of Egypt.
الله عز وجل يبدل الأدوار.
Because Allah changes your circumstance.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
الله عز وجل قد يحوجك إلى خصمك إذا عرضت عن الله.
Allah Azza wa Jal, if you turn away from Him, may make you need your very enemy and opponent.
إخوة يوسف.
The brothers of Yusuf.
ماذا فعلوا بيوسف عليه السلام؟
What did they do with Yusuf?
فرقوا بين يوسف وبين أمه وأبيه.
They separated him from his parents.
ألقوه في الجب.
And they threw him into the well.
واتهموه باتهامات.
And they accused him of many things.
واتهموا بأنه يسرق قد سرق أخ له من قبل.
And they accused him of being a thief.
وعقوا أباهم.
And they disobeyed their father in doing so.
قالوا تالله إنك لفي ضلالك القديم.
And they said to him, by Allah, you're in your old misguidance.
وهكذا تعاملوا.
That's how they behaved.
مرت الأيام.
But as the days passed,
دخلوا على يوسف وهو عزيز مصر.
they entered upon Yusuf when he's now the leader,
محتاجين إليه.
because they're in need of his help.
يا أيها العزيز.
And they said, O leader,
مسنا وأهلنا الضر.
we and our family have been struck with hardship.
وجئنا ببضاعة مزجاة مدفوعة لا يحبها أحد.
And we've come to you with the small possessions that we own.
فأوفي لنا الكيل.
So give to us our due.
وتصدق علينا.
And then-
تفضل علينا.
And then do further good to us.
احتاجوا إلى يوسف عليه السلام.
Because now they're in need of Yusuf.
قال هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه؟
So he asked them, do you know what you did to Yusuf and his brother?
طلبوا منه العفو والصفح.
And so they then asked him for forgiveness and to pardon them.
ثم دخلوا عليه ساجدين سجود تكريم.
And then they entered upon him and they prostrated out of respect for him.
أحوجهم الله عز وجل إلى خصمهم وهو يوسف عليه
So
السلام.
Allah Azza wa Jal made them in need of the very person they considered to be their opponent.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
لا يشغلك البشر عن الله.
Don't let people preoccupy you from Allah.
لا يشغلك ملكك عن نسيان الله.
And don't let your possessions preoccupy you from Allah.
لا ينسيك مالك عن الله تبارك
And
وتعالى.
don't let your wealth preoccupy you from Allah.
فتغرق في المال وتغرق في المنصب وتغرق في العمل عن الله.
And so you drown yourself in your wealth and in your possessions and in your work, and you forget Allah.
الله عز وجل ينظر إليك ويراقبك.
Because Allah Azza wa Jal is ever watching over you.
ويحاسبك على كل حركة وسكنة.
And Allah Azza wa Jal holds you to account for every small thing that you do.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
وأنا أحد التابعين يقول
One of the scholars of the Tabi'een said,
ذهبت إلى الحج.
he said, I went for Hajj.
بينما أنا أسعى بين الصفا والمروة.
And as I was making sa'i between Safa and Marwa,
وهذا الرجل إخواني التابعي من بغداد.
and this scholar from the Tabi'een came all the way from Baghdad.
قال فرأيت أحد تجار من أكبر تجار بغداد وهو يسعى بين الصفا والمروة.
He said, and as I was making sa'i between Safa and Marwa, I saw one of the richest men of Baghdad there.
ورأيت مماليك حوله.
And I saw his many slaves and servants surrounding him.
يدفعون الناس عنه.
And they're pushing people away out of his way
ليمر هو في طريقه.
so that he can go and walk calmly.
وقد رفع رأسه وصدره.
And he was arrogant and proud,
متعاظما في هذا.
as if he demands this and owns this.
قلت في هذا المكان يتكبر.
So I thought to myself, the scholar said, how in this place can he be arrogant? In this place, this holy place.
في موضع التذلل والخضوع لله يتكبر في هذا المكان.
Because this is a place of showing humbleness, humility before Allah, not a place of arrogance.
يقول مرت الأيام.
He said, the scholar, after many days passed
مرت السنون.
and years passed by.
قال بينما أنا أسير في بغداد.
He said, as I was walking one day in Baghdad,
وركبت جسر بغداد.
and I went over the bridge in Baghdad.
وجسر بغداد أخواني من أشهر الأماكن التي يمر عليها أهل بغداد كبارهم وصغارهم.
And this is one of those places that everyone frequents, rich or poor.
كشارع مثلا شارع إكسفورد هنا في بريطانيا.
It's like Oxford Street in London.
يقول بينما أنا أمر فرأيت رجلا.
So he said, as I was walking, I saw a man
ثيابه خلقة مقطعة.
with ripped clothing,
ويمد يده للناس.
and he's stretching out his hand asking people for charity.
رأيت أخذ أنظر إليه.
So I started to look at him,
كأنه هذا التاجر اللي كان منذ سنين عند الصفا.
and he said that he looked like that same rich businessman that was making sa'i.
ما صدقت نفسي.
So he said, I didn't believe that it was the same man.
اقتربت منه.
So I came closer to him,
كأنه هو.
but it looks like he's exactly that man.
اضطررت أن ألتصق به.
So I had to go closer to him
وأنظر في وجهه هكذا.
and to actually look at him very closely in his face.
قال ما لك تنظرين؟
So the man said to him, what are you staring at?
قلت له أنت كأني رأيتك في السابق.
He said, I think I've seen you before.
أليس أنت الذي كنت عند الصفا؟
Are you not the one who's making sa'i those years ago?
وحولك مجموعة من العبيد يدفعون الناس؟
And you had people around you that were pushing others away?
قال أجل.
He said, yes, that was me.
تكبرت في موطن يتذلل فيه الناس له ويخضع الناس لله.
He said that I was showing arrogance, displaying arrogance at a time when everyone else was showing humility before Allah.
فأذلني الله تبارك وتعالى في موقف يجتمع فيه الناس.
So now Allah is humiliating me in this place where other people are passing by me.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
إخواني في أحد كبار تجار الخليج.
One of the well-known businessmen of the Gulf.
وهو من تجار السلاح، يبيع السلاح للدول.
And he sells weapons to countries.
وكان مليارديرا كبيرا مشهورا على مستوى العالم.
And he was a well-known millionaire during his time.
كان يأتيه الفقراء ويسألونه.
So the poor people would come to him and ask him for help.
ماذا يرد عليهم؟
What would he say?
يقول أنا لست مسؤولا عن آدم حتى أغذي بنيه.
He said that I'm not responsible for Adam, that I have to take care of his children now.
وكان يطرد هؤلاء المحتاجين.
And so he would just ignore them.
مرت الأيام.
As the days passed by,
انقلبت الأمور.
his circumstances changed.
أصبح مديونا.
He became in debt.
ذهبت كل ثروته.
And all of his money and wealth left him.
كان في السابق يأتي بالآيسكريم والبوظة لابنته من فرنسا في الصباح يؤتى إليها بالبوظة من.
He was so wealthy that he would pay for ice cream to be flown in all the way from France for his kids.
ويؤتى إليها بالخبز يوميا في الصباح من فرنسا إلى بيته.
And every day he would have bread, fresh bread delivered to him all the way from France.
مرت الأيام.
But as the days passed by,
مطلوب ملايين.
he is now in debt of millions.
ما عنده تذكرة ينتقل فيها من القاهرة إلى جدة.
He didn't even have a plane ticket that he could afford from Cairo to Egypt, to Jeddah.
ووجد من يتصدق عليه.
So he had to find someone to give him sadaqah.
من أبناء آدم.
From one of those children of Adam.
الذي يقول لم أكن مسؤولا عن آدم.
The same people he used to say, I'm not responsible for the children of Adam.
حتى أعطي بنيه.
That I have to be responsible for his children.
تصدق عليه بتذكرة.
And so someone gave him money to buy a ticket.
درجة سياحية وليست درجة.
In economy class.
وصل إلى جدة.
Once he arrived in Jeddah.
وهو على كما يقول ويل شير على كرسي.
And he's being pushed in a wheelchair.
وما وجد أحدا يدفعه ليذهب إلى شقته وليس إلى بيته في جدة.
And he doesn't have any money now to pay for the taxi fare that takes him to his flat, not a house, a flat.
أتى إليه رجل إلى جدة.
So someone from Jeddah came to him.
عرفه.
And he recognized him.
قال أنت فلان؟
He said, are you not so and so?
قال أجل.
He said, yes.
قال ما لك جالس هكذا لا تذهب بالسيارة.
He said, why you just stopped here in the middle of the airport like this?
سكت.
So he came quiet.
ما عندي مال.
He doesn't have any money.
قال أنا سأدفع لك.
So the man said, I'll pay your taxi fare.
وأدفع لك شهريا.
And I will give to you monthly, every month some money.
حتى تعيش على هذا.
So at least you can live.
انتبه أنت تتعامل مع الله.
So beware, for you are dealing with Allah.
لا تنظر إلى عظمتك وإلى نفسك في هذه اللحظة.
So don't think that you're great or mighty at any moment in time.
فالجبار متكبر هو الله.
Because the one who is truly great and powerful is Allah.
أظهر ضعفك بين يدي عظمة الله.
So show your poverty, your need before the greatness of Allah.
كلما ارتفعت مكانته تذلل لله عز وجل.
And the more that you are raised in this life, then show further humility before Allah.
ليرفعك الله.
So that Allah may continue to raise
في
you.
كل وقت أنت محتاج إلى الله.
Because every moment of your life you are in need of Allah.
أنت فقير محتاج إلى الله.
You are poor, in need of Allah.
أنت غني محتاج إلى الله.
Even if you're rich, you still need Allah.
أنت قوي محتاج إلى الله.
If you're strong, you need Allah.
أنت ضعيف محتاج إلى الله.
And if you're weak, you need Allah.
أنت مريض محتاج إلى الله.
When you're sick, you need Allah.
أنت صحيح محتاج إلى الله.
And when you're healthy, you need Allah.
كلما أكرمك الله عز وجل بنعمة ازدد ضعفا وتذللا بين وخضوعا بين يدي عظمته.
And as Allah spreads or gives to you His blessings, then increase in your humility and need before
لا
Allah.
تنظر إلى قوتك.
Don't look at your own strength
ولا إلى غناك.
or your wealth
ولا إلى شرفك وجاهك.
or your station or position,
فأنت تتعامل مع الله.
because you are dealing with Allah.
والحمد لله.
And all praise is due to Allah.